I'd like to welcome to the show Rene Amador. How are you doing, Rene?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks for having me, Alex.
Oh, brother, man, thank you for being on the show, man. I truly appreciate it. I have to say before we get started, man, I am such a fan of what you guys are doing at AR. It's mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. But we're going to get into all of that in this episode. But before we start, I have to tell the story because we were talking about it before we got on.
Yes.
And please tell please tell the audience how we know each other.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you reached out because we had some big press recently. We came out with some big announcement recently. Um, and uh, and just this morning, I was thinking, Alex Ferrari is such a familiar name. It's the type of name you don't forget, right? So I was thinking, this sounds so familiar. I went back to my personal email from like, over 10 years ago and went and looked and put your name in and found I've been on your newsletter since about 2007 with Enigma Factory. And I think it was originally because you were kicking butt on the DVX 100A and then the HVX 200, and you were one of the few people that was doing visual effects intensive stuff on those cameras. So we wanted to use those same cameras. So we were following you to see what you were up to, what your workflows were, and then you came up with a bunch of like workshops too. And I think I actually might have purchased them.
Yeah.
But I think the original way that I heard about you is we had a couple films go to Dragon Con 2007, and
Mm-hmm.
your shorts were there as well.
All
So
right.
once I saw those, and I think we were actually in contention against each other. It was like you won first prize, I won second prize, something like
Wow.
that.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
isn't that wild? Yeah, so that's how I first learned about it. I was like, who the hell is this guy?
Why
Who's this guy that
why
we
did
we
he get first place? What the hell's going on here? I gotta watch these things.
exactly. That's
That's
exactly what happened.
hilarious. That's
Yeah, so
hilarious.
I have an email here. First email from your newsletter, June 2007. What a blast from the past.
I
Yeah, it's
was
amazing.
when you told me this story, I was absolutely floored because I first of all, I can't believe you have email from 2007. So that alone, there's issues that you need to work out. But but that and then you read the email. It was about my second film, Sin, and I'll hey guys, I
Yeah.
want to let you know about a new film. It is so funny how that little short film I did in 2005, people still talk to me about it and still reach like
Right.
when I and it happens more often than you would think. Like the last thing I thought of when I rang in to our interview today was you were gonna go, hey dude, I remember Broken. Like I just didn't. That's hilarious.
That's amazing. Yeah,
It's pretty amazing, man. But thank you for sharing that insane
of course. So
insane.
I'm a fan, just to be clear, I'm a fan. And
That's
I'm
awesome.
here, I'm here just to interview you, basically.
I'll come on your podcast or anytime you like, the AR podcast, anytime you want.
Cool, cool.
So how did you get into the film business in the first place, sir?
Yeah. I think originally my dad wanted to be a filmmaker way back in the 70s and ended up going into computer engineering instead. So he was one of the top software engineers for the defense industry for about 40 years. But through that entire period, from even a young age, that spirit of filmmaking was still inside him, and he definitely, imbued my entire upbringing, my media culture with that love of cinema. So, I grew up, before the age of 10 watching Fellini and Kurosawa and all these intense films, just really just thinking like, okay, this is culture, this is what art is, not really knowing that like it's pretty unusual to get that type of education as a young child in cinema. So at about the age of 10, I, made a pretty determined statement to my family, like, I am going to be a filmmaker. I'm going to be a director, screenwriter, and make these projects, do some TV, do some film, do what I can. And really, I think it was a couple films that did that for me. Obviously, I think like science fiction films were pretty big for me, Star Wars. But then there was one in particular, which people might laugh at, which is Dune, the David Lynch movie.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to own that because my dad was a pretty big David Lynch fan. And I don't think I'd seen any of his other films. It's the first film I'd seen of his. And just in the first 10 minutes of that film, you see the set design and the production design that they brought to that project. And you just think, somebody's job is to get paid to make those sets. And just to think how much fun and how much amazing creativity goes into that type of collaboration. I thought that's something that I have to be involved with, because as a kid you look out into the rest of the world and you're like, who else is approaching that level of creativity and that level of storytelling and imagination? It's not really something that you see out in the world. So film for me was that moment where I realized dream and imagination and reality and career could all come together into one package and really create something special. So that's how I really got started. And then just kind of thinking of that mentality at a very young age. And then I made my first project, obviously, for a high school, trying to get rid of doing homework.
I did that too. It was awesome.
So we made a video. I think my first video was called Derangado. It had to be in Spanish because it was for Spanish class. And it was basically kind of like a Lost Highway ripoff. Like some weird, surreal thing where people were, in dark lighting, looking intense, that type of thing. And that was a lot of fun. And one of the things that happened when I was making it is literally everyone said to me, hey, you've done this before. Like, I can tell that you've done this before. And I would be like, nope, never done it before. Just watched every single behind the scenes video, DVD thing that I could get my hands on. So that's how I got started. And then in senior year of high school, I made a very popular video called Real Ultimate Power, the Official Ninja Movie, which was based on their website called realultimatepower.net, which was very popular at the time. And that got over 3 million views, that video. This was in 2002 in high school. So I personally set up the...
How'd you get the views? Where were those views? Because YouTube wasn't even around yet.
You're correct. So there's two things. One is it's an adaptation of a website into a video, which is something that hadn't really been done before. And in fact... we found out that the only other project to have done it at the time was something called Undercover Brother, which I think you may remember. That was actually a website to begin with. Oh. So we were part of this little wave in the beginning of viral content where basically we're adapting websites into videos. So we got linked on the front page of that website, and that's where a lot of the viewership came from. However, there's another component of it, which is that I was very active in 4chan, in the somethingawful.com forums, which were kind of the precursor to like Reddit and like meme groups and that type of stuff. And actually in the Something Awful forum groups with BYOB and FYAD, I can't say what those mean on air, with their acronyms, people who know Something Awful will know these. I was a regular on these, and being able to put the content out, I would be making memes, shareables. This was 10 years before, people even knew what a meme or shareable was. Right. I would be making them for the film, for my short film, putting them on the website, being like, look at how ridiculous this is, putting a link to the video. And that's how we made it happen. That's how we reached millions of views. And that was such a new strategy at that time. And what's funny is 10 years later, I was doing exactly that for Fox. Which is so weird. I was doing exactly that for Fox, actually for American Idol, for one of the top media brands in the world. I was doing that meme and shareables creation with. So going full circle, but that's really how I got started, doing my own distribution, setting up the web hosting myself, and then back when you had to think about that type of stuff. And then that project was extremely absurdist. It was very similar, I would say. It was inspired kind of like by the Christopher Guest movies, Waiting for Guffman, that type of stuff. I'm a really big fan of Christopher Guest. Just the whole, that insane improv energy where anything can happen and that sensation of awkwardness. I kind of see him almost as the spiritual successor to Fellini in the way that he casts off oddball characters that look odd and just give you a certain feeling, and then they go off and do something that's highly unusual or just highly tense, and it gives you such an intense narrative feeling in those moments. I really enjoy that type of stuff. So if you know that about me, a lot will make sense about my films because they tend to have an absurdist, really irreverent, and kind of a screwball sensibility to them. Yes.
Well, that's awesome, and yeah, I did the same meme situation in 2004, 2005 when I did my short films. It was, I mean, that was such the Wild Wild West, man. It was
Yeah.
such the Wild Wild West back then, and it's hard for people to understand that you couldn't just put your film up. Like you literally couldn't. There was no YouTube, and even YouTube
Mm.
sucked in 2005. Like the quality
Yeah.
was atrocious.
Yeah.
It's the technology just wasn't there, let alone to stream. You know what I did with Sin, that second film, your email. I actually wanted to sell it on iTunes, but couldn't because there was no technology to get it up on iTunes. So what I
Sure.
did was I would sell the download of an iTunes file, the MV4 file or whatever the iTunes format is. I would sell it on my website, and then they would click $1.99 to rent it, and then they would double click on it. It would open up in the iTunes app. Back
That's
then,
genius. I think remembering back up to that time and how difficult distribution was online. That's a genius move. I used this is really going to date it. I used something called Real Player.
oh, I remember Real Play,
That
of course.
allowed,
Yeah,
yeah.
the Flash. It was Flash based, right? Or close to.
I'm
No,
not quite
I'm not sure if it was
sure.
Flash
I
based, but
think
I
it
know
was
Real Player.
JavaScript or
Yeah, something like
but
that. Yeah.
it was JavaScript, possibly Flash or Shockwave or whatever the hell they
Oh,
had back then.
Shockwave. Ooh,
Remember that?
Dreamweaver.
Exactly. Um, so yeah, you would have to build the actual infrastructure of distribution at
Yeah.
that time, and it was such a pain in the butt. And when YouTube came along, really the original people might not realize this. The original pitch that YouTube had wasn't even as a video destination. It was as a pitch to video creators. Hey, we'll make it super easy for you to get your video online. Then you can embed it wherever you want, here,
Mhm.
there, everywhere. It wasn't meant to be a destination site. It was only later when people started linking directly to the YouTube page instead of their own website with the video embedded that it started to become a video destination site. And that was very interesting to see happen in real time, for
No,
sure.
it's crazy. And I also, by the way, I think, and I want someone to tell me differently, but I think I have the first filmmaking tutorials up on YouTube.
I wouldn't be surprised
It was
because
'05.
yeah, I think I bought them, and I remember it being unusual. Like I hadn't heard. Like I'm trying to think. Like it almost felt infomercially. Like oh, learn how to meditate or something. You would see that kind of stuff on TV, but you didn't. It's not like now where masterclass and learn
Oh,
how to cook and learn
sure,
how to
sure.
this or that or it wasn't a common thing. And the fact that you were doing something on media creation was pretty unusual because at that point it had just become viable to do like fully digital media, and then you had realized, oh man, I can do screen caps and I can do all sorts of stuff, and so you were showing the entire process in an interesting way that I don't think that had been done before. Like, where did you learn how to do that?
I
Because I
was a
don't think there's
I was a
like
post
DVD
guy.
extras.
I was a post guy, dude. I was editing since '96, so I just kind of
That's why.
understood the post production aspect of things, and then I have a marketing head,
Hmm.
and that's how it kind of all combined that with everything else I've done in my life. It kind of came up and started doing it. I always just figured out like, and even then I still didn't get it because I left YouTube. I should have stayed. I should have stayed and just kept making. If I would have made tutorials, just kept making tutorial videos, I would own the
Yeah.
filmmaking tutorial space. But I,
That's fun.
I, but I'm not a teacher. I'm a filmmaker. Spielberg didn't do tutorial videos. Why should I? And that was the ego speaking. But who knew? No
Oh
one
my
knew.
gosh.
No one knew. No one knew. Um,
Exactly.
but so we're here to talk about your company that you've co-founded, ARwall. First of all, which is if I'm correct about it's a company that deals with augmented reality and versions of that. Can you explain to people what augmented reality is?
Absolutely. So we call ourselves an AR/XR company, which basically means augmented reality and what they call extended reality, or some people call it mixed reality. And basically what this means is we're combining live action elements in real time with CG elements. And it's different from traditional visual effects, which is entirely a time shifted process where you shoot and then you do the compositing at a later point. So we're not in that game. We're in the game of capturing it on set live, whether it's a live stream, a live broadcast, or live to tape type of scenario where you want to give the impression of a live broadcast. But the whole point is you walk away from set with the final shot, with the final pixel. And that's a fundamental shift in the way that people have been conceiving of virtual production. Because I think when it comes to film and TV, prior to us coming onto the scene, most people's heads were at pre-visualization, which
Right.
means, you hire the third floor who's worked on Star Wars and Avengers films, one of our sister companies that we love working with, and so you have a temporary composite which isn't even meant to be like a full like fully 100% tracked a composite. It's meant to be reminiscent and just to give the filmmakers on set like an idea of what it's going to be like. So that's not final pixel, and that's where real-time graphics have been relegated in film and TV for quite some time, about 10 years. When we came on the scene in 2016, there was no solution that was fast enough to do like the window illusion and camera tracking the way that we did. There was some stuff for experientials. Unreal had something called VR Cluster, and then Barco had developed something for industrial use that used goggles with like big ping pong balls on them, that type of thing. But nobody had looked at how do you combine those experiential and industrial tools that were being developed for commercial purposes into the media industry, so that you could actually get the CG in a realistic way, sutured behind the live action actors and sets. So we saw that as our original challenge, and we actually accomplished that in 2017, and immediately signed a Netflix and NBC Universal project called Night Flyers, which was our first project. And to describe what we're up to here, basically what's happening is, if you think of traditional rear projection, you have a giant screen. It's giving the sensation that the actor, the sets are in a location in which they're not actually, so in space or moving or in a forest or whatever the case may be. The problem with rear projection is as you transpose the camera, move the position of the camera, you begin to see the static rigidity of the 2D plate behind the actor and set where the rear projection screen is. And that's because obviously the illusion of parallax is broken, right? And the skew is not correct. The perspective is not correct. So what we realized was, with the new real-time, like the new advancements in immersive in VR and AR and that type of stuff that were happening in 2016, there would be an opportunity now to actually track the camera's position as it moved and update the vantage point onto the rear projection plate, so that in under 41 milliseconds, the time that it takes for a shutter to open and close, we can actually update the background dynamically so that it always looks like you're looking into a deep window illusion, like a deep environment on that screen. So it's basically a way to combine traditional rear projection technology with new immersive tracking technology, and that's what our vision is.
So I can only imagine what someone like Stanley Kubrick would do with this if he was alive today, because he was one of the. I mean, rear projection been around forever,
Yeah.
but I think Stanley was one of the first to really take it to a whole other. Because I still remember 2001.
Yeah.
It's flawless. I mean, you can't even tell that it's rear projection. Like
Exactly, and actually that was our thesis statement when we were going out and getting initial clients and getting financing and everything like that. Is we would show Wizard of Oz, actually, and if you the Wizard of Oz tornado sequence, everybody can kind of picture the spatial reality of that tornado, and then to sit down with an investor and tell them, look, everything here is rear projection, and look how real that looks. and we can come back to this perfection in compositing. And this is a proven technique for 100 years, that this is something that we can do in a successful way. And that's really how we got the ball rolling. It because I think that was key to our company's success. We didn't come in and say, we're the new kids on the block and we've got the new stuff and these are the toys. No, we did it the opposite. We said, we have such amazing reverence for the traditional cinematic methods, and basically between 1990 and now is an aberration where everything's green, and we need to get right. That's kind of the way that we were pitching it. To be serious, like between 1990 and 2020, everything was green for like 30 years, and it was really
it was blue then green.
Yeah, exactly. It's blue and then green, and we're gonna look back at this moment in history and be like, what the hell were they thinking? That's what they were doing before these types of real-time backdrops came on the scene, and they started shooting actual photons again, right? Not making fake virtual photons to bounce around everywhere. So just kind of thinking about from a historical perspective, from a legacy perspective, what would be the next technology that comes around? And that's how really that we thought of it. And I think that we've been acknowledged in this space as people who, didn't try and come in and, and muscle our way in with some new tech, but really have reverence and respect for traditional cinema. And I think that's what we're all about.
So the first time I really, when AR came into my viewpoint, I'd heard about it, but again, because of early, like even in 2015, 2016, 17, it was still very early on, and the technology has grown so fast. I mean, it's insane how quickly the processing power is just, grown, that now you're able to do things like we're doing currently. But the first time I really kind of came into the zeitgeist was Mandalorian. When Mandalorian has really put it on the map. And really, would you agree? Like when you saw Mandalorian, it was like, oh, well, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely we were having conversations, and, technically we did the first one with Night Flyers about a year prior to Mandalorian coming out is when we were doing our work. But absolutely, we had such a big splash with this LED backdrop stuff that when people saw Mandalorian and they saw what was happening, they got so excited. I mean, we just had an insane rush of interest from everyone in the industry. Most people honestly thought that we had done it because they didn't realize that a second team was capable of doing it, which is good for us because we got a lot of calls and everything like that.
Sure.
But that was massive. And it really put this type of real-time technology on the map, because you have, a guy like Jon Favreau backing this, talking about it, gushing about it, everything like that, and it makes the selling process a little bit easier, and it gets us further along on most projects than prior. So it helped a lot. It really made people see, like, you know what? I don't need to do a camera test, to see if it's viable anymore. I don't need to see any more footage. Like, I know it's viable. And now I just need to make sure that I'm working with the right team. So because we're one of the longest serving teams in this space, doing these LED backdrops, we've benefited a lot from the Mandalorian's big surge in interest in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw some of the behind the scenes of what was it, Night Flyers, I saw some stuff that you were doing on Night Flyers, and some of the, just sitting there watching a camera guy move the camera and then the background move with it. Your mouth drops. You're just like, what? But there's also another big benefit to that is the lighting. You're getting real-time lighting, which you don't get in a green screen, and that is something that you just can't replicate in post. And being a post guy, it's difficult. It's not difficult. It's nearly impossible to do it really well, where now you have reflections. You have lighting. Like if there's a sun out, the sun is hitting you. If there's night lights hitting you, night lights are hitting you.
And here's the thing. Here's what's funny. You wouldn't exactly know those benefits unless you'd actually had to go through the green screen compositing process personally and go, oh wait, this doesn't work. Like this thing that should work isn't working. Like I need to recreate this entire lighting scheme and lighting conditions, or change it, and fake it or something like that. and really until you run up to, what I would call like the dead end of what green screen is capable of, there's a certain point which you can't go any further, without really just, faking everything. It's at that point that you realize, gosh, there's got to be a better way. And myself, working as a visual effects compositor for quite some time, I think thinking, is this what I'm going to be doing when I'm 65? Like, am I going to be sitting here keying out green and
Spill
painting
suppression.
out,
Yeah.
yeah, painting out noise, and like, is this what I'm going to be doing? And just having so much respect for those artists who, in my opinion, these artists who do high level feature film and TV work and do this green screen compositing, these are Da Vinci level artists that, like, we as a culture have basically said, like, you know what, just remove the rock from the background, okay? Just like
Right.
just like
We
remove.
basically it's like having Leonardo da Vinci. Like, look, I know that you can do the Sistine Chapel, but just I need that rock killed out. That the wire over there. I need you to get rid of that
Yeah,
wire.
yeah, exactly. Like, can you get?
You're absolutely right. You're
That's
absolutely right.
that's exactly how it feels, and like, and you'll be hanging around with these visual effects compositors, and they'll all be like painters, on their free time, and
I know these guys.
like,
They're
just
amazing.
amazing work and stuff, and you're going, gosh, okay, is that what we're asking these people to do? And really just thinking. Something is going to come along and it's going to be able to do this in an automated way, and what does that look like, and realizing that actually has to happen on set while the camera is rolling. If we can get a robotic compositor, to use the wrong term basically,
Mhm.
but make an automated compositor that actually composites the shot before the shutter opens and closes while you're shooting, then ultimately, that's going to be the right moment, and in order to complete the composite before it goes into the camera's lens. So that's really how, back up that entire process all the way onto set, and even actually before the frame is exposed. That's how we came up with this, and that's was the original conception, just for, like, from a really basic standpoint, thinking of it that way.
So all right. So we see the technologies there, and now you use these giant LED backdrops, and how big? I mean, what's like? Do you use projectors? Do you actually use monitors? Do you do a combination of Is there like stitching of giant 80 or 150-inch monitors? How are you doing it?
Sure. So it's a technology that most people will be familiar with for concerts. So you imagine, the big Beyonce concerts. She's got those amazing LED screens behind her that are coordinated in motion, motion design, motion graphics with the tracks and songs and her performance and everything. So it's literally those same companies that are deploying the screens. There's a lot of great LED rental companies out there that we work with. And the difference is that the density, the pixel density of the screens is much tighter when you're working for film and TVs, because you want to avoid pixelation and moire,
Right. Yeah.
and those types of issues that go along with it. So let's say, at a concert, you might have a pitch that's like 5.6 millimeter, which describes the distance between the LED diodes. But on film and TV, you might be increasing that by 8 times. So 8 times more pixels in the same like square inch, that type of thing. So what you end up with is basically kind of like the difference between SD and HD way back in the day, where you'll be looking from the same distance, but you'll just see it being much smoother. Really, the illusion of curves and everything is maintained. And so, like, what we've basically been looking at right now is about 1.5 millimeter pitch for these LEDs. They are built up like Legos. So, you build them one row, and then you build this next row, and then you build the next row until it's up to the size that you need. So we generally, the most common size that we're working at is about 24 by 10 feet or 24 by 12 feet for a screen. And then the largest that we've done for a commercial production is about 45 feet by 16 feet. And that was
That's
for Night
just
Flyers.
That's
That's the
huge.
whole side. That's the whole side of a soundstage. Like an entire side of a soundstage is filled with a virtual world, and then that way you have the flexibility to put the sets and put the actors kind of anywhere in the stage and know that you're going to have that amazing
Do,
backdrop.
do you have did you do a ceiling as well? Because I remember in Mandalorian they actually have that. It's like a dome almost.
Mm-hmm. So we didn't do a ceiling with LED panels. However, there was a full production lighting grid up there where they were able to coordinate with the action on the screen to make sure
It's
that
amazing.
the lighting's coordinated, and that was done by hand. I think now because that was way back in was that 2017, something like that.
Way
So
back. Ooh, way back.
way back in 2017, pre
Trust me, I
everything.
wish I was back in 2017. We're in
Yes,
2020
that's okay.
currently.
Oh my gosh. I think if we were to do it now, it would be there would be some automation. There'd be some DMX controlled lighting that would coordinate with the system, and we might be doing some interesting stuff with that very soon. And so that's generally the screen sizes that we're working at. We have worked with rear projection as well. Barco and Christie make some amazing projectors that I think would be perfectly suitable for film and TV. So it just requires, to be frank, like a better DP. You have to just be a DP that knows how to use rear projection. But you can get some really amazing looks. And one of the benefits is it doesn't have the moire and pixelation the way that you perceive on LED screens. So it can be really good for some scenarios.
And that would be, and then you could actually get a much larger screen with a projector as opposed to LEDs. Easier or not?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a give and a take. You can get a larger screen. The cost of the projector goes up the larger the screen is because it's a limited amount of luminance being pushed out of that lens and that bulb on that projector. So for people that want to get into these types of virtual backdrops and virtual production using LED or rear projection can be a good first step. You can play around on rear projection without too much cost. But I also recommend just playing around on a TV because you can get some really large TVs and get some shots that look really good and just start learning about the technology. So we do sell a product that's specifically for that. It's called ARFX Home Studio. It's made for creators that were stuck at home. So basically for myself. And actually, we originally conceived of the product because I would have to do the demos here at home, at my home, on my TV. And a lot of filmmakers were like, it's great to have a big LED setup. Can I get the exact thing that you are showing me right now on your TV? That would be amazing just to learn. So we did come out with a product specifically for that, if people are interested.
And the cost of that is, I mean, you're saying right now the price is around 10 grand if I saw your website correctly, right?
Yeah, 9,500 is what we're asking for ARFX Home Studio. That comes with the workstation itself, as well as all the tracking. You additionally get technical support, knowledge-based video tutorials, and get to our expertise to support your projects. It also comes with a launch scene pack of about 100 backdrops. So it's really everything that somebody would need to get started in this space, and that's going to connect perfectly to your TV and your existing camera.
So let's talk about the backdrops because that's the one thing that this all sounds fantastic, but unless you're a guy or a gal who knows how to render out real time, like how is the creation of the backdrops work? How can you create customs? Can you go out and shoot footage and put it on there? Does that work? Like explain that process? What, like the actual creation of the backdrop?
Sure. It's definitely the part of the process that still needs work. Like, this is not a perfect method the way that it's been done right now. And basically, the way that method is you build up the actual geometry of the scene, either in Maya or 3D Studio Max, Blender, whatever the case may be. Then you bring it into Unreal Engine, and at that point, you need to apply real-time materials and shaders and that type of stuff, lighting, specific types of lighting materials and shaders to the elements. And then at that point, you're ready to shoot, and you can use the backdrop. So it's taken visual effects folks a little bit to figure out, okay, this is how I moved from my traditional post methodology to pushing everything into a real-time engine, which is Unreal Engine is what we're currently working on, which is one of the top real-time graphics engines in existence. They're definitely the leaders in this space.
And then this was also kind of pioneered in the video game space.
Absolutely, and that's I think when filmmakers start to look at this real-time space and realize they're kind of dipping their toes in the same waters as video game people, they can sometimes get intimidated because it's a different world, it's a different culture, and everything like that. But I think once they realize this key point, it starts to become a lot easier for them. In the video game world, this is built off of a world of, indie makers and people who are coming out of the culture of technology and independent technology. So these people believe in sharing quite a bit. So whenever, for example, whenever a video game company finishes a major project and it has success or it doesn't or whatever, and they're basically done with those assets, they tend to then take every single one of the assets that they made and liquidate it onto a marketplace for you. So you can go and buy every single thing from the video game, or you can buy the select, most in-demand things from that video game. So as a filmmaker, when you come to Unreal Engine and you go to the Unreal Asset Store and you go to TurboSquid and all these other places where you can begin to get these assets, what you realize is you're sitting on a legacy of 20 plus years of asset creation where video game creators have just been making, put it on the marketplace, make, put on the marketplace. And that's been happening thousands of artists for decades. Oh, yeah. So you'll be able to go and get, your Lamborghini, your Forest, that type of stuff.
Your T-Rex. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So a lot of the time, what we're doing with a client when we're doing a location scout, which is like a virtual location scout, we'll actually go through the Unreal Asset Store and do like, what do you want? And they'll be like, okay, I want an alley. Okay, alley. We type it in, and we get 15 different alleys, and then we're basically going through the screenshots, going, does this feel right? Does that feel right? And that's actually how we're doing it in the moment.
That's
and then
amazing.
When we actually, isn't that crazy? And then when we actually need to like lock this specific shot, like on a this is shot A, this is shot B, that type of thing. What we'll end up doing is literally on a Zoom chat like this, I'll be flying through the location, and they'll say, you know what, that looks pretty good. Like, I like that tree right there, that type of thing. Okay, so then I'll bookmark it into our system. And then when they show up on set, that's exactly what they saw on that Zoom call. And that's genuinely how we're doing these location scouts. Now, in the middle there, of course, we have amazing technical artists who are, making everything look photoreal as much as possible, getting the animation done, getting the scripted events done, effects and that type of stuff. So that's
are you bringing in the locations when you're bringing in these files? Are you just bringing elements in and you're putting it all together, or are you building are you getting a full blown alley with the garbage cans, with the lighting schemes? Like, what are you getting exactly?
You're getting everything. Like either we're building off of one specific existing stock asset, which is royalty free, by the way. These are all royalty free. You can use them. You could go and you could make a Disney film with them, and technically the artist couldn't say anything. It's kind of a weird reality that we live in. Right. So they come with everything generally inside them. Or you can populate them with all sorts of whatever props you want. So there's full flexibility here to create the world that you want to be created.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing a show for Legendary, a TV show, and we were doing so many insane visual effects. Like, we did 150 visual effects a week for a full blown show. It was insane. And the only way we could do it is we went to TurboSquid. And I'm like, okay, we need a dune worm. Okay, great. Let's get in. And we'd go and find them. And they were all pre-built. And then my VFX artists can go. Because if they would have to create those elements, we'd never make it. And
exactly.
They're cheap. They're not super. I mean, I'm sure an alley or something a little bit more detailed is expensive. But relatively speaking, a lot cheaper than having to create it yourself.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just getting like a table and chair or something, you're probably spending like less than $30 maybe, something like that, for like a really, really nice one. So it's a really interesting world once you get into fully digital environments. And I think it's the same kind of thing that happened when people jumped from physical sets to green screen. What's happening now is that process of you're ending up with more finalized assets now, whereas before, you'd have to fit it into the world of your film. Now you can find pretty much anything of any style, change it up a little bit, change the color or something like that, and you have an asset ready to go for your project. So it's a really odd time in media right now, because labor and creativity and artistry are getting massively undervalued, because all this stuff is out there for free. But at the same time, as a creator, as a filmmaker, it's almost like never been a better time, because you've got all this royalty-free assets. You've got the actual capability to utilize those assets in your project with our technology and similar technology. So you're like, it's a really interesting time. And what we're seeing from filmmakers is actually, we're getting this sentence a lot. Wow, I've always had this concept that I would never have been able to do, and now I'm going to do it. And so we're working on a couple projects right now where these are projects where the artist, the director, they wanted to do this 5 years ago, but it's not a budgetary reality. And now we're able to lower that budgetary threshold for them, so that vision that they have is actually achievable. And as a filmmaker, when I'm moving the needle on, like, it's great, it's great to make some money, and that's awesome, right? But when I'm moving the needle on what is actually getting greenlit, that's amazing. And two, the creative vision that is actually getting executed upon that project greenlight. I mean, to be able to affect that in a meaningful way, it's very satisfying. And to me, that's what I'm working for.
So that was the other thing I want to talk about. The budgetary benefits of this is massive, because a show like Mandalorian could not be made without this technology. It'd just be too expensive. It'd be like making a half of a Star Wars film every episode, which
you got it.
It's impossible.
It wouldn't have happened. Like Mandalorian plainly wouldn't have happened. And a lot of people might not realize that there was an actual live action Star Wars series that was attempted. Not too long, like maybe.
Oh, they had like 70. They had 70 episodes written. I remember, like, Lucas had like 70 episodes written of that thing. He was going to do it, but he was going to do it. Couldn't figure it out.
They couldn't figure out, because at that point they were using green screen, and so just the compositing and tracking and getting everything working,
it's too much,
with the beautiful animation that they were interested in getting, it just wouldn't have happened. Or frankly, it didn't happen. And I think that they've been pushing the live action Star Wars series concept until they saw this technology was accessible. And I like to say that we were part of actually pushing them over that edge. We did a showcase at Disney for about 2 days where we showed everyone the viability of this technology, and really pushed it over the edge. And we've been definitely causing some trouble. Like when we come out here, and like, just to be clear, not everyone is a fan of what we're doing. You can imagine whose lunch we're eating when we're coming out and saying you never have to hire a compositor again. You never have to hire a roto guy again, that type of thing. So yeah, I mean, we got all sorts of pushback from the visual effects folks at, many different studios. But I think when you actually see, wait a second, we're not actually taking money out of someone's pocket. What we're doing is we're greenlighting a project that would have never happened.
Right.
Getting the cost of those shots that are appropriate for our technology way down. And for those shots where visual effects is still a perfect fit, post visual effects is still a perfect fit, they can continue to have those shots. And there's many shots in which our technology will never be suitable. Flying an X-wing down the trench, and having those beautiful exterior shots of the X-wing and that type of stuff. There's no way that we're going to be relevant to that, because there's no, the live action component of that is so minor. So like, there's always going to be a place for visual effects, and the fact is, they should be working on those amazing trench run sequences. They should not be working at separating, actresses' blonde hair from green. And that's
you're absolutely. They should be more for like if you try to do this with Avengers Endgame, the final battle. I was trying to think about when I saw this technology. I'm like, okay, how could have this been played out? Because I saw the behind the scenes of the Avengers Endgame, and it's just massive green. It's just massive, massive, massive amounts of green. But I'm like, how could have this worked in that environment? And maybe they could have probably dropped millions of dollars off of it if they would have structured certain shots within some sort of AR dome of some sort. But those giant massive shots when you've got 50 people running, maybe you could, maybe you couldn't. There's still going to be some CG comping in there, but there might be a lot of time and money saved. Would you agree?
Absolutely. So we actually did a case study on Night Flyers. We went and got comparison pricing for what if these shots had been achieved through traditional green screen visual effects. And what we found was pretty startling. We were looking at anywhere from a 62 to 73% reduction of budget for those shots. So meaning what? So we were cutting somewhere around 400 grand off of an episode budget just by being there and accomplishing these effects and composites for them on set, versus them having to capture a green, then send it out to a house to work on for 2 months, come back just to give them the flaring and the beautiful play of light that they're getting free out of the box with our technology. So I think if you're trying to achieve a look that uses optical effects pretty heavily, flaring, heavy use of defocus and bokeh, chromatic aberration, that type of stuff, if you're looking for that, this is going to be a much better choice. Needless to say, reflection, refraction, smoke, liquids, fluids, all the type of stuff that gives you a headache on green screen. We're addressing all of those types of illusions in a much better way, because it's physical photons coming out of the screen, hitting the smoke, hitting the liquid, hitting the actor's face, hitting the set, and eventually bouncing into the lens, as opposed to having to replicate that artificially. I mean, it's just for those filmmakers, those DPs and directors that are looking for that look, it's just a much better choice for them. So that's what we've been seeing be successful. But it's also, to be clear, this is a budgetary concern as well. Producers are liking this technology because it's saving them company moves. It's saving them post-production time. They're, potentially simplifying their post-production down. So if you're post-supervisor, maybe you're working 2 months instead of 4 months. That's the reality that we're bringing to the table with this technology. It's great to talk about, bringing dreams, to fruition and that type of stuff. But if the dollars and cents don't make sense, then it's never going to happen. So at every moment of our company, we've always been, mindful of the fact that we're independent filmmakers and we're budget conscious. I know filmmakers like yourself who are working filmmakers, you're budget conscious as well. And it goes all the way up and down the ladder. Nobody is looking to spend more than they have to. So if we can create that narrative that, this is an opportunity for you, instead of having to go chase that tax incentive, which is basically what producers are doing. Like they're just, okay, we're going to, save money, go chase that tax incentive, go to Bulgaria, or wherever we have to go. Instead of doing that, cut 70% of your effects budget using this technology, and it's going to be suitable for, 90% plus of the shots that you need. And that's basically the narrative that we've been pitching. With that case study, that's actually available on our website. If people are interested in going and taking a look, just look for Night Flyers case study on the homepage. And then hopefully you'll see there, like, just how disruptive this technology is going to be. And here's the thing. It's so disruptive that I think without the pandemic occurring, we still would be struggling to get adoption. Now that the pandemic occurred, I've done demos for over 400 filmmakers and executives in the past 6 months. Virtual demos, like me in my living room in front of my TV, and just beginning to see that interest trickle in for Q1 of 2021. Yeah, it's going to be an exciting time for virtual production in general.
Now, do you believe, because of, this is a larger conversation, but I think you guys are definitely an ingredient in it, because because the theatrical experience and the theatrical component of the distribution pipeline is pretty much gone right now as we're currently recording this. I'm sure it will come back in one way, shape, or form in the future, but I just read an article yesterday that Disney is completely doing a reorganization and they're completely focusing on streaming. So that means that Marvel movies and all these big tentpole movies are going to start going straight to streaming because they just like, this is the future. Theatrical is not where it's at. I'm sure it still will have a component of it, of course, but it's not what it was. And it's not, I don't think it's going to go back to pre-COVID levels anytime in the near future.
Yeah, I think analysts are saying there's an 81% drop in 2020. There's going to continue to be a 35% drop in theatrical in 2021, and only until the end of 2022 are we going to see a return to quote unquote normal, which is the end of 2019.
All right. So the one thing in regards to what your part is in this conversation in regards to the future of distribution and the projects and things is that studios are not going to be able to spend $300 to $500 million on tentpoles anymore because the return on the investment isn't as much there because the theatrical, international theatrical components aren't nearly as big as, before an Avengers will make $2 billion, where I don't know, could it make that streaming? I don't know. Would I pay $30 opening day to see Endgame? Probably. And I believe there's probably at least 40 or 50 million people in the world that probably would. And that's that's $1.5 billion.
Yeah, I think it's such a weird time because actually what's happening is now the established streamers, Amazon, Netflix, these guys are actually having conversations with the theater owners to see like could we fill this gap that the major studios are no longer filling because they're just not generating and releasing the content. They just basically the metrics don't make sense, right? They made these projects for a pre-COVID world, and they have to release it in a post-COVID world.
Right.
And it's just that those metrics are just never going to line up. So what's happening with the streamers is they were kind of thinking more of those metrics making sense for them. The business model that they have just fits a little bit better, and they have the flexibility to go out and do quote unquote a minor theatrical release just to drum up some publicity for the project. So I think the way that it's trickling down to effects vendors and technology vendors working in entertainment like us is, one, the number of people that are looking for a budget conscious solution has spiked. Like we're getting Paramount, looking for a budget conscious solution, Disney looking for a budget conscious solution. And that's just not where you were before. In fact, it was the opposite. If you went above a certain level in quote unquote, industry notoriety, industry status, you basically don't play with anyone below a certain level. Right?
Correct.
Just because you're trying to keep that, that quality high, you're trying to keep the entire, social stratum high.
Right.
So it's definitely changed. And the other thing that's changed is you have a lot of people who are smart, who've been poised and waiting for a moment like this, and who are now attacking. And they're now, they see the established players all, tripping and falling and stumbling, and they're going, wait a second. This is my opportunity to have a conversation with that studio executive, to have a conversation with that filmmaker, to have a conversation with that talent agent that I wouldn't have been able to have prior. And a lot of the people who are being successful now are people who have experience in effects, in virtual production, and then also in working at smaller budgets. So they're willing to have the conversation with us, on behalf of these major studios in a way that we wouldn't necessarily have had before. And that's been super interesting because, these are major filmmakers who want to have these conversations, who are looking to become the virtual production guy at this studio. And that's an exciting thing to be hearing from filmmakers.
So with your ARFX home studio product, can independent filmmakers use this technology in their projects? If you have a $200,000, $300,000 movie budget, and it's not a sci-fi extravaganza. It doesn't have to be, but if you have an action film, or if you just want to create a little bit more scope in the backdrop of shots, to give more production value to your as opposed to flying to Montana for that sunset, you can have the Montana endless sunset for 12 hours, like they did on.
You've got it.
Yeah. So can they do it, and what does it take to get that to work for them?
Yeah. So the way that we're pitching ARFX Home Studio is that this is the method to learn about this new virtual production technique. However, creators being creators and filmmakers being filmmakers, immediately people are saying, you know what? I could hook this up to a rear projection system. I could hook this up to an LED system and actually be able to shoot some stuff. And get some shots out of the box, completely composited and ready to go, looking great, just with this ARFX Home Studio box, some lighting and my camera and everything like that. I think that's obviously what we want people to think, because at the end of the day, there is nothing special about, going out to a TV that's 4K resolution and going out to a rear projection system that's 4K resolution. From the perspective of the actual system, there is no difference. It's just pushing out resolution, right? Just pushing out pixels, and doing that, at a high frame rate that's going to be suitable for the camera, the production. So from the perspective of the system, there is no difference. What we're saying basically is for ARFX Home Studio, it comes with backdrops which are preset for you. Preset backdrops, stock environments, so that if you want that forest, that temple, that apartment, that office, whatever, that's going to go ahead and come in those scene packs for you. But if you want custom content, or you want to have deeper tech rehearsal tools, then our ARFX Professional system, the first system that we came out with, which is what we license out to major studios and that type of stuff, that's still going to be the better choice for those professionals.
And what is the cost of those?
If you're interested in knowing about the cost of ARFX Professional, you can reach out to us. It's actually, we have different pricing depending on different types of, it's a sliding scale depending on the project, everything like that. The other reason I mentioned that is because we do actually have bundled packages with stages located here in LA. So we have partnered with stages here in LA that have the LED screens, or have suitable setups. And you can actually get entire bundled packages by coming to us and using those stages. So that's what we've been working on during the pandemic. So we've taken the opportunity to go like, you know what? These stages are having issues getting people in. One way that we can attract those people is having a more COVID-safe, social distancing safe solution. So that's what we've done. And we're very hopeful that people are going to find those valuable and attractive.
Now, and finally, are we just getting closer and closer to the Star Trek's holodeck? I mean, essentially, this is essentially where we're going.
It's funny you say that, because one of the first things that happened when we got big studio heads coming in is the studio head would say, it's great that you can track the camera. That's awesome. When is it going to track me? When is it going to track my head, me as an individual? And I can actually get these illusions for, walking around a room. So we actually developed that, we built that, and we released it at CES just earlier this year, beginning of the year prior to the pandemic, and we won Best AR Experience for that product. It's called ARwall Interactive, very creative name, as you can see. And basically what it is it uses depth cameras to establish a track of your head position. So it's tracking this point right in the bridge of your nose between your eyes. And then it's delivering the same window illusion that we're delivering to our camera, delivering it to you as an individual. So you walk into a room with, 3 walls of this experience, which is some of the conversations that we're having right now. And you'll be in another world. And as you move this way, that way, it's the perspective is going to shift perfectly to your vantage point. And we're actually getting that down to the point where it's no longer perceivable. The delay is no longer perceivable by the human eye. So we're talking about something that feels stuck to your head, and you move around and it feels stuck to your head every little centimeter that you move. The other interesting thing about that is, since we can track your head, we can actually track your entire body, your hands, your eyes, everything. So we can create situations where, based on your body position, your pose, or the actions that you take, the system can respond to you. So what am I talking about? Characters that look directly into your eyes, because remember, we know the position of your head. We look directly into your eyes, we talk to you, we respond to your voice, and then we actually respond to your gestures. So if you point and say it's over there and point over there, the CG character can look at where you're pointing and react realistically, using either a chatbot system or AI or something like that. So that's the type of really crazy stuff that we're working in. And I'll be frank, I would love to say that, we're definitely one of the companies that down the line, the patents that we filed, the work that we've been doing with brands and with venues, hopefully will someday lead to a holodeck type device. Not necessarily saying that we're going to be the company to do it, because I still do think it's a little bit down the line. Maybe by the end of my life, we may have something like that. I don't know, 50 years, maybe something like that. But I do definitely think that in between now and then, we're going to have these very interesting experiences, like from the perspective of somebody who, wasn't born with these type of technology being around. It is going to seem and feel like a holodeck type of experience. And just to be clear, those are conversations we're having right now about let's deploy that first quarter of 2021. Let's make that happen. And I think the pandemic also helped push that conversation along, because people can't get out and they can't have these experiences. And particularly when you think about training and education, these are situations where, you can't stop training people just because it's cumbersome and difficult, right? The people still need to be trained up. So that's where we're seeing kind of the first interest coming from that space. So I know it's something that may seem distant in science fiction, but those conversations are happening now. Creating those immersive rooms, those conversations are happening.
The funny thing is that as you're saying this, I'm like, in 50 years, this will look like SD. This will look like a silent movie technology comparatively to what the holodeck is. But it's not that far. Like, we're not that far. It's a stone throw. It's a big stone throw away, but it is still something that's not completely astronomical in my lifetime, to see a holodeck where you're interacting with photoreal computer generated images that look literally as crystal clear as a human being standing right next to you. Can you only imagine the kind of filmmaking that will be? Can you imagine where kids will be in their garages with holodecks shooting the next Avengers Endgame would look like an indie film.
Exactly. And you can imagine a world where you put up the holodeck like wallpaper, right? You put up the screen like wallpaper, you're just painting it on, rolling it on, and that type of thing. And then it all self-coordinates, goes, okay, this is, what position I am in the world and everything like that. It's not that difficult to imagine it. I think the technology exists right now. What doesn't exist right now is the will and the actual use case that would demand that investment to get there, right? That's what we're working on. And we're trying to find those partners. And it's folks in location-based entertainment. It's folks in training and education. It's also folks in the defense industry. We're having some conversations.
Oh, I can imagine.
Well. So there's all sorts of use cases for that. But, until we find that perfect one, it's not going to happen. So that's what our job is as a company and as a business, right? To have conversations with these decision makers and go, what is actually going to get the money to flow, and what are the requirements that we can hit now that they're going to get that money to flow and actually make investment happen. So that's really my work as a CEO, is helping folks see that. I've been successful in doing that in filmmaking. Now with this technology, with ARwall Interactive going out of filmmaking, out of media, out into the rest of the world, I'm having very interesting conversations where they're aware of Mandalorian. They're aware of the work that's been happening, because this is something that broke out even just of the entertainment community. So we're having conversations where that amazing work that has been done in film and TV is actually moving the ball in other industries, because they're like, you know what, Jon Favreau did it. Maybe that'll work for our thing too. It's a really weird time.
And I think the pandemic has supercharged all of this. I mean, this is all something that would have happened eventually. Like we would have all eventually gone to more streaming than theatrical. The writing was on the wall. All this technology, it would still be moving forward. I think it just sped it up probably a few years in time frame where it would have been. So it is what it is in regards to what we're dealing with the pandemic. But there is some benefits. Because people are like Zoom. Like now everybody, I don't know if you've been driving around LA. Traffic's fantastic. Like this is like, it's like, this is a wonderful place to live now. Like all of a sudden, like I drove to Santa Monica last weekend. It took me 35 minutes.
Oh yeah.
I live in the Valley. That's an hour and a half normally.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because everyone's working at home.
Exactly. We're almost back to the Clueless days where, I think the famous line from Clueless is everywhere in LA is 20
minutes away. Yes.
And we're like, we're almost there. We're getting under 40, under 40 minutes. So we're going to get there sometime. Yeah, I agree with you.
So, Rene, I appreciate you being on the show, man. I want to ask you a few questions I ask all of my guests. What advice would you give a filmmaker trying to break into the business today? Besides obviously buying an ARwall FX studio, home studio.
Buy an ARFX home studio. No, I think, I think my real answer probably tracks with that pretty well, which is, I think anybody can see that the media and entertainment industry is undergoing a transition right now. And you don't want to be on the wrong side of that transition. You don't want to be of the mentality of, I'm going to be making $500 million movies and we're going to be putting out in theaters and everybody, we're going to put money in our ears and, scream and, that's what filmmaking is going to be. I think it's shifted. And I think that a successful filmmaker now is somebody who understands their audience, who understands who's coming to their films, listens to those people, and doesn't listen to anybody else, because that's the reality right now. In order to be a successful creator, you've got to be selective about who you're listening to. I think that's the big one right now. A project that is successful is going to work on Hulu isn't necessarily going to be successful and work on Disney Plus, and that's just a weird reality that we live in right now, that these are siloed audiences happening. So I think the idea of mainstream filmmaking as a whole has fundamentally collapsed and changed. I don't think that when we think of a mainstream film, we're probably thinking of Avengers Endgame or that type of thing. And I think moving forward, it's going to be a different type of film that we're probably thinking about. And to be frank, it's probably not even going to be a film. It's probably going to be a TV show, a TV series, a limited series, or something like that. Raised by Wolves, I think, is a really good example. I don't know if you've been watching that on HBO
I haven't seen
Max.
it yet, but it's on my list. Yeah, with Ridley Scott.
That's a really good example because it's a post Ridley Scott film. It's pitched as a Ridley Scott universe, but in reality, it's a TV show, and Ridley Scott's projects are films traditionally. So in my opinion, it's somebody who looked at the model that Ridley Scott has mastered and has really, gone out of his way to nail, and then taking that and transplanting that into this, post-transition world that we live in. And that's, I think, a good project for people to think about moving forward, how it takes traditional, familiar symbology, story structure, and just does it in a different way. And I think that's what successful filmmaking is going to be like in the future. And so technology is a big component of that. Virtual production, I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. So in the same way that, you and I were, I think saw success in moving into digital video as a creative a tool for us, as a crucial creative tool for us, and non-linear editing as well. I think that same virtual production is going to be that same tool of empowerment for filmmakers who are coming up right now. Like if you just graduated from film school and you want to get a job in Hollywood, go and make a project on Unreal Engine. Go and make a little 1 minute thing on Unreal Engine. Then email me. I will freaking hire you, because there's so few people that have both filmmaking experience and Unreal Engine experience. It's just not something that people are looking at right now. And I think that for those who do, it's going to be very successful.
And what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Um, this is something definitely something that took me a long time to learn. I was born and raised in Silicon Valley, and we we're a bunch of tech heads in Silicon
Mm-hmm.
Valley. We all think that we're smarter than everyone else. Basically, is the nice way to say it. And I think coming out of that culture, coming to LA, and really dealing with people in a wide span of industries, you see just how empowering technology is to people, but also how intimidating it can be to people. So I think the thing that took me the longest to learn is you have to be patient and you have to be forgiving for people's familiarity and knowledge with technology. And if you can be that person that takes a difficult technological process and task and makes that easy for someone to understand or use or analyze or whatever, that's a friend and a partner and a collaborator that you're going to have for a long time. But if you're the type of person that goes, they don't get the tech, screw them, they're dumb, they're stupid, they're old-fashioned, they don't get it, then all of a sudden you become part of the problem because that person sees you as an obstacle or something. So that's the thing that took me the longest to learn. Being good at technology and being a master at your tools is a way for you to bring people up. It's a way for you to bring people up. It's not a division between you and the other person. It's not we're over here, we know tech and we know everything and you guys don't. Because at the end of the day, no, the reason that person hasn't learned the tech is because they've been busting their ass mastering some other part of the creative process, some other part of the business process. And they're masters at that. And you're a master at this and they're a master at that. And together you can make some magic and you can make something happen that never would have been possible before. That's how I created this company, ARwall. This is a multidisciplinary, multifaceted company. Not everyone in the company is a full tech head. Some people are more creative. Some people are artists. Some people are their business people. And being able to get all these people in the room, talking to each other respectfully, and coming up with solutions that are going to be helpful to the entire industry is so amazing. It's such an amazing experience to have. I wish I would have done it at every prior company that I founded. I founded 3 companies prior to this, and I definitely didn't think that way. I wanted it to be, birds of a feather all together.
Sure.
And it just doesn't work that way. You need people who think differently from you, and I think that's the thing that took me the longest to learn.